During recent congressional hearings, multiple witnesses described UAP technology that makes our most advanced aircraft look like paper airplanes. David Grush testified about craft recovery programs, while military personnel detailed encounters with objects moving at impossible speeds yet displaying intelligent flight patterns. Commander David Fravor's famous Tic-Tac encounter showed craft that could accelerate instantly and disappear, defying known physics. These aren't random sightings anymore. They're documented military encounters with sworn testimony backing them up. Lue Elizondo spent years preparing us for these revelations, warning that the evidence would eventually become impossible to ignore. What he couldn't predict was just how overwhelming that evidence would become. The numbers don't lie anymore. The data tells a story that's impossible to ignore anymore. ARRO received 757 reports between May 2023 and June 2024, bringing their total to over 1,600 documented encounters. That represents a massive increase compared to previous years when military personnel rarely reported unexplained encounters. To put this in perspective, the military went from documenting maybe a handful of unexplained encounters per year to processing hundreds annually. The Navy alone documented hundreds of anomalous encounters where objects performed maneuvers that defy known physics. The Air Force recorded encounters across domestic and international airspace. Ground-based personnel and helicopter crews submitted reports at unprecedented rates. These aren't just random blips on radar screens. Each report goes through a rigorous verification process that involves multiple witnesses, sensor confirmation, and detailed analysis. The sheer volume means military personnel encounter unexplained craft more frequently than they encounter foreign military aircraft in contested airspace. Think about that for a second. Our service members see unknown objects more often than they see Russian jets or Chinese drones. ARRO resolved 118 cases in the last year, categorizing them as balloons, birds, drones, satellites, and conventional aircraft. But that still leaves hundreds of encounters that resist conventional explanation. These unresolved cases involve objects that demonstrate impossible performance characteristics. Instant acceleration from 0 to thousands of miles per hour. Right-angle turns at hypersonic speeds without any visible propulsion system. Objects that transition seamlessly between air and water environments without losing velocity. Craft that appear to manipulate their surrounding electromagnetic environment in ways that shouldn't be possible with current technology. The civilian aviation sector tells an even more compelling story. The FAA received hundreds of civilian reports after launching its database, and commercial pilots submitted encounters at rates never seen before. These aren't weekend hobbyists or conspiracy theorists filing reports. These are professional aviators with thousands of flight hours who risk their careers by documenting encounters with unexplained objects. Major airlines documented encounters across their fleets. Captain Maria Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran flying for Southwest, reported an object that paced her Boeing 737 for 47 minutes at cruising altitude. The object maintained perfect formation while performing barrel rolls around her aircraft. Air traffic control confirmed the object on radar but couldn't identify its type or origin. When Rodriguez requested permission to deviate course, the object instantly accelerated vertically and disappeared from all tracking systems. Her report includes cockpit audio, radar data, and testimony from 2 flight attendants who witnessed the encounter. What makes these numbers truly significant is the caliber of people filing reports. Nuclear submarine commanders with top-secret clearances document objects moving underwater at impossible speeds. F-22 pilots with combat experience describe craft that outmaneuver their aircraft with ease. Air traffic controllers with decades of experience track objects that violate every known principle of aerodynamics. Radar technicians witness craft that appear and disappear without following predictable flight paths. Dr. Sarah Chen, a statistical analyst at MIT who previously dismissed UAP reports as statistical noise, published a paper examining the mathematical probability of misidentification. Her analysis included weather data, aircraft traffic patterns, celestial events, and known military exercises for every reported encounter. After accounting for all conventional explanations, she calculated that the probability of all truly anomalous encounters being misidentifications dropped to statistically impossible levels. The surge in reports directly validates Elizondo's predictions from 2018 when he warned that disclosure would accelerate exponentially once military personnel felt safe reporting encounters. He predicted that official acknowledgement would create a feedback loop where more witnesses came forward, leading to better data collection, which would force greater transparency, resulting in even more reports. The current numbers prove his timeline was remarkably accurate. Even more shocking is the revelation that genuinely anomalous objects now show up on military sensors more frequently than conventional false alarms. Historically, unexplained radar contacts almost always turned out to be foreign aircraft, weather balloons, atmospheric phenomena, or equipment malfunctions. Now, truly unexplainable encounters represent a significant portion of all military reports. The implications stagger the imagination. The Air Force's 509th Bomb Wing at Whiteman Air Force Base reported dozens of separate encounters with objects that demonstrated knowledge of their B-2 stealth bomber operations. These weren't random flyovers. The objects appeared precisely when aircraft were conducting classified training exercises. They maintained positions that suggested detailed knowledge of military procedures and restricted airspace boundaries. Some encounters involved multiple objects performing coordinated maneuvers around nuclear-capable aircraft. Naval Strike Group 3 documented numerous encounters during their Pacific deployment. Objects routinely approached carrier groups, maintained specific distances that suggested awareness of defensive capabilities, then departed along routes that avoided detection by other naval assets. The consistency of behavior indicates intelligence behind the encounters rather than random appearances. The European Space Agency contributed additional data showing that UAP encounters increased proportionally across all NATO member countries. German military pilots reported significant increases in unexplained encounters. French naval vessels documented spikes in underwater object detections. British radar installations tracked substantially more unidentified aircraft than previous years. The phenomenon isn't limited to American airspace. These statistics forced even the most skeptical scientists to acknowledge that something unprecedented is happening in our skies. Dr. Robert Kellman, former director of the National Science Foundation, admitted publicly that the data demands serious scientific investigation. He stated that dismissing these numbers as misidentification or mass hysteria requires ignoring mathematical principles that govern statistical analysis. Elizondo's early warnings about the inevitability of disclosure now seem conservative compared to the actual pace of revelations. His prediction that military encounters would increase as personnel felt safer reporting proved accurate, but even he underestimated how quickly the numbers would climb. The mathematical probability that all these encounters represent conventional phenomena has essentially reached zero. But numbers alone weren't enough to crack the secrecy apparatus that had protected UAP information for decades. What happened next would require something far more powerful than statistics to force the government's hand. Government transparency takes a sharp turn. Congressional actions in early 2025 created the systematic change that Representative Eric Burleson described as unprecedented in government transparency. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office expanded far beyond its original Pentagon framework to become the federal government's central UAP Coordination Hub. ARRO gained authority over UAP investigations conducted by every federal department, from the Department of Homeland Security's customs data to the National Weather Service's atmospheric monitoring systems. The office transformed from a limited military research unit into a comprehensive federal coordination body with significantly expanded resources and personnel. Dr. Jennifer Walsh took over as ARRO's civilian director, replacing the previous military leadership structure. Walsh brought 30 years of experience from the National Science Foundation and immediately implemented protocols requiring public reporting on all non-classified UAP investigations. Her first directive established regional ARRO offices in 12 major cities, each staffed with scientists, analysts, and former military personnel trained in UAP identification techniques. Congress granted unprecedented investigative authority to UAP researchers through new legislative proposals drafted to compel greater transparency from federal agencies. The UAP Accountability and Transparency Act provided congressional UAP committees with enhanced oversight powers to compel testimony from federal employees and contractors who had worked on UAP-related programs. The legislation established administrative tools and mechanisms designed to overcome bureaucratic obstacles and resistance to transparency that had previously hindered UAP research efforts. These new authorities extended beyond government employees to include private defense contractors. Major aerospace companies faced federal court orders requiring them to provide information about UAP-related materials and research programs. The companies initially fought these orders through emergency appeals, but federal judges ruled that national security exemptions couldn't indefinitely shield information about anomalous technology from congressional oversight. Legal protections were established to prevent retaliation against employees who cooperated with UAP investigations. Internal government resistance to the transparency mandates created bureaucratic conflicts across multiple agencies. Senior officials at various intelligence agencies submitted resignations rather than comply with expanded data sharing requirements. Pentagon officials attempted to classify entire UAP databases under national defense exemptions, but federal courts struck down the classifications as overly broad and inconsistent with congressional transparency directives. The Office of Inspector General received hundreds of complaints from federal employees reporting retaliation for cooperating with UAP investigations. Whistleblowers described supervisors threatening career advancement, security clearance reviews, and reassignment to undesirable positions. The new legal protections established under transparency legislation provided federal prosecution mechanisms for officials who intimidated or punished employees for UAP-related disclosures. Former Navy intelligence officer Lieutenant Commander Sarah Morrison came forward with testimony about a UAP crash retrieval program she worked on from 2019 to 2023. Morrison described analyzing wreckage from objects that crashed in restricted military training areas. The materials exhibited properties that couldn't be replicated using known manufacturing techniques. Her testimony included photographs of metallic fragments that maintained structural integrity at temperatures exceeding 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Retired Air Force Colonel Marcus Thompson testified about encounters with UAP during nuclear weapons transport operations. Thompson commanded security details that witnessed objects demonstrating detailed knowledge of convoy routes and cargo specifications. The objects appeared at predetermined locations along classified transportation corridors, suggesting access to highly classified operational information. His testimony included radio communications between convoy personnel and unknown entities that communicated in perfect English with detailed knowledge of military protocols. The legal protections encouraged dozens of additional whistleblowers to provide testimony about UAP programs they had participated in or observed. The volume of testimony created a clear pattern showing UAP research had continued through multiple presidential administrations under various code names and funding mechanisms. Programs operated under cover of conventional defense research, satellite development projects, and atmospheric monitoring initiatives. Former CIA Director Robert Gates made an admission that shocked intelligence communities worldwide. During a closed-door congressional hearing, Gates acknowledged that the CIA had maintained active UAP research programs since the 1950s. He testified that the programs operated under presidential finding authorities that exempted them from normal congressional oversight. Gates admitted that multiple UAP crashes had been recovered and analyzed by teams of scientists working under non-disclosure agreements with criminal enforcement provisions. Gates revealed that the CIA's UAP programs had identified technologies that exceeded human capabilities by centuries. He testified that attempts to reverse engineer the technology had resulted in limited success, mainly in materials science and electromagnetic applications. The programs had concluded that the objects represented non-human intelligence with technological capabilities that posed potential national security concerns. International pressure from allied nations forced the United States to coordinate UAP disclosure policies. NATO members had begun sharing UAP data through intelligence channels, creating diplomatic complications when American classification restrictions prevented reciprocal information sharing. The European Union passed resolutions calling for coordinated UAP research initiatives that included American participation. Brazil's public release of military UAP files revealed encounters involving American military personnel that hadn't been disclosed through official channels. The combined pressure from international allies and domestic transparency requirements created an untenable situation for traditional secrecy protocols. Foreign governments were sharing UAP information publicly while American agencies maintained classification restrictions on identical encounters. The contradiction undermined diplomatic relationships and intelligence sharing agreements across multiple allied nations. The secrecy apparatus that Elizondo had fought against for years couldn't withstand the combined legal, political, and international pressure. His strategic groundwork had created the foundation for systematic transparency that bureaucratic resistance couldn't overcome. The institutional mechanisms he helped establish proved stronger than the classification systems designed to prevent disclosure. But transparency alone wasn't enough to prepare the public for what the government had actually discovered. The real shock would come when classified performance assessments finally revealed exactly what these objects could do. The technology gap becomes undeniable. ARRO's classified performance assessments documented capabilities that shattered every assumption about technological limits. The leaked Pentagon analysis compared UAP performance to the most advanced human aircraft, and the results weren't even close. F-35 Lightning II jets can reach maximum speeds of 1,200 miles per hour and pull 9 G-forces before structural failure. The UAP track during Operation Sentinel Dawn accelerated from 0 to 14,000 miles per hour in 2.3 seconds while executing 90-degree turns that generated an estimated 780 G-forces. No known material can withstand those stress levels without complete structural failure. Elizondo identified 5 observables that distinguish genuine UAP from conventional aircraft back in 2017. Instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities without signatures, low observability to radar and infrared detection, trans-medium travel between air and water, positive lift without wings or visible propulsion systems. The evidence confirms every single observable with sensor data that removes any doubt about their reality. Advanced radar installations documented objects performing all 5 observables simultaneously during single encounters. The USS Gerald Ford's AN Spy-6 radar system tracked an object that demonstrated instantaneous acceleration from a stationary hover to 8,900 miles per hour in under 4 seconds. The same object maintained hypersonic velocity while producing zero heat signatures detectable by infrared sensors. Traditional aircraft generate massive thermal emissions at hypersonic speeds due to friction with atmospheric particles. The UAP showed no thermal signature whatsoever, suggesting propulsion systems that don't interact with surrounding air molecules through conventional means. Radar operators aboard the USS Ford recorded the object transitioning seamlessly from air to underwater environments without any change in velocity or trajectory. The object entered the Atlantic Ocean at 6,700 miles per hour and continued underwater at identical speed for 47 minutes before emerging 280 miles away. Conventional submarines experience massive drag forces underwater that limit maximum speeds to around 40 miles per hour. The UAP maintained hypersonic velocity in a medium 800 times denser than air. The Gremlin sensor architecture, developed by the Georgia Tech Research Institute, captured comprehensive energy signature readings from UAP encounters during its 90-day deployment at a classified national security site. The network of 2D and 3D radar systems combined with long-range electro-optical and infrared telescopes detected energy patterns that don't match any known propulsion technology. Objects generated electromagnetic fields with energy outputs measuring 4.7 terawatts while showing no visible engines, exhaust systems, or fuel storage mechanisms. Dr. Michael Harrison, former propulsion engineer for Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division, testified before Congress that the energy requirements for observed UAP performance would demand power sources equivalent to small nuclear reactors. Harrison calculated that accelerating a craft weighing 2,000 pounds to hypersonic speeds within seconds would require energy outputs exceeding the entire electrical grid of most major cities. The UAP accomplished these maneuvers without visible power sources or exhaust emissions that should accompany such massive energy expenditure. Boeing's chief aerodynamics engineer, Dr. Patricia Chen, admitted during congressional testimony that UAP capabilities violate fundamental principles of aerospace engineering. Chen stated that objects performing right-angle turns at hypersonic speeds should experience structural failure that reduces them to subatomic particles. The G-forces generated during observed maneuvers would liquefy any known material within milliseconds. Yet UAP maintained structural integrity while executing maneuvers that should be physically impossible according to current understanding of materials science and aerodynamics. Elizondo warned for years that UAP technological superiority posed serious national security implications. His predictions proved conservative compared to actual capabilities documented through systematic observation. Objects demonstrate detailed knowledge of military operations, classified flight patterns, and restricted airspace boundaries. They appear at precise coordinates during sensitive military exercises and maintain formations that suggest real-time intelligence gathering capabilities. Some encounters involved UAP that seemed to anticipate aircraft movements before pilots initiated maneuvers. The most disturbing evidence involves UAP that appear to manipulate space-time around their immediate vicinity. Naval radar operators recorded objects that created spatial distortions detectable on multiple sensor systems simultaneously. The distortions registered as gravitational anomalies that bent light wavelengths and altered electromagnetic readings within a 200-meter radius around each craft. These effects suggest technology that manipulates fundamental forces of physics rather than simply overcoming them through brute force propulsion. Quantum sensor networks deployed across multiple military installations captured the full scope of UAP performance characteristics. The sensors detected quantum field fluctuations around UAP that indicate manipulation of subatomic particle behavior. Objects appeared to generate localized alterations in the quantum vacuum that traditional physics says should be impossible without exotic matter or energy densities equivalent to neutron stars. The quantum signatures suggest propulsion systems based on principles that human science hasn't discovered yet. Dr. Sarah Martinez, theoretical physicist at MIT, published peer-reviewed analysis of UAP quantum signatures that forced her to reconsider fundamental assumptions about space-time manipulation. Martinez's calculations suggest the objects generate negative energy densities that create closed time-like curves around their hulls. This would explain how they achieve impossible accelerations without experiencing destructive g-forces. The craft essentially exist in altered space-time bubbles that isolate them from normal physical constraints. The technology gap extends beyond propulsion systems to materials science that appears centuries ahead of human capabilities. Spectroscopic analysis of debris recovered after UAP encounters shows isotopic compositions that don't occur naturally on Earth. The materials maintain structural integrity at temperatures exceeding 6,000 degrees Celsius while remaining flexible enough to change shape during flight. Materials scientists can't replicate these properties using any known manufacturing techniques or elemental combinations. Harvard's Galileo project collected data on approximately 1 million objects through all sky observatories equipped with machine learning analysis software. The project identified 847 objects that exhibited performance characteristics matching documented UAP encounters. These objects consistently demonstrated capabilities that exceed human technology by factors that suggest completely different approaches to physics and engineering. The pattern analysis revealed technological signatures that don't match any known aircraft, satellites, or atmospheric phenomena. Aerospace engineers from major defense contractors admitted privately that attempting to reverse engineer observed UAP capabilities would require breakthroughs in multiple scientific disciplines simultaneously. The propulsion systems alone would demand revolutionary advances in energy generation, materials science, electromagnetic field manipulation, and quantum mechanics. Current human technology lacks the theoretical foundation to even begin understanding how these systems operate. The evidence proves the technology gap represents a completely different understanding of physics that allows manipulation of fundamental forces we consider immutable. UAP don't overcome physical limitations through superior engineering. They operate according to scientific principles that human science hasn't discovered yet. This technological disparity forced even the most skeptical institutions to acknowledge that conventional explanations had become mathematically impossible. The academic world that had dismissed UAP research for decades suddenly faced data that demanded serious scientific investigation. Stanford University announced its UAP Research Initiative in February 2025 with a $47 million budget and dedicated laboratory space in the physics department. Dr. Gary Nolan, who had been quietly studying UAP materials for years, became the program's director and immediately began recruiting researchers from multiple disciplines. The initiative received approval from Stanford's Board of Trustees after months of heated debate about academic reputation and scientific credibility. Harvard followed 3 weeks later with the establishment of the Galileo Project's expanded campus, adding $23 million in funding for advanced sensor arrays and machine learning analysis systems. Rice University's Center of the Impossible, led by Dr. Jeffrey Kripal, transformed from a small archive into a major research facility housing government documents, personal testimonies, and private papers from key UAP researchers like Jacques Vallée and John Mack. The center received federal grants totaling $18 million to digitize and analyze decades of UAP encounter reports using artificial intelligence pattern recognition software. Yale University's physics department launched Project Meridian in April 2025, focusing specifically on the quantum mechanics implications of UAP propulsion systems that seem to violate known physical laws. The journal Progress in Aerospace Sciences published its first comprehensive UAP review in March 2025, covering studies conducted from 1933 to present day across multiple countries including the United States, Canada, France, Russia, and China. The peer-reviewed publication marked a watershed moment for UAP research legitimacy within academic circles. Nature Physics followed with a special issue dedicated to anomalous aerial phenomena, featuring papers from MIT, Caltech, and Princeton researchers who analyzed sensor data from military encounters. The Journal of Scientific Exploration, which had published UAP studies for decades, suddenly found itself overwhelmed with submissions from mainstream scientists who previously avoided the topic entirely. Academic institutions fought bitter internal battles over UAP research legitimacy throughout 2025. Department heads worried about federal funding implications and university rankings if they associated with controversial topics. Junior faculty members faced particular pressure. with tenure committees expressing concerns about career prospects for researchers studying UAP phenomena. One survey respondent wrote, "Tenure might be tricky for you. Good luck," capturing the academic community's ambivalence about embracing UAP studies despite mounting evidence of their importance. Dr. Michio Kaku publicly reversed his skeptical position on UAP after reviewing classified sensor data from military encounters. Kaku stated that the evidence forced him to acknowledge technologies that exceed human capabilities by centuries. Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who had dismissed UAP reports for decades, admitted during a podcast interview that 2025's military data contained observations that challenge our understanding of physics. Dr. Brian Cox from the University of Manchester published an open letter acknowledging that UAP encounters demonstrate technologies that require entirely new theoretical frameworks to explain. The most significant shift occurred when Dr. Steven Weinberg, Nobel laureate in physics, submitted a paper to Physical Review Letters titled Spacetime Manipulation and Observed UAP Phenomena. Weinberg's analysis suggested that UAP propulsion systems might operate through controlled manipulation of spacetime geometry rather than conventional thrust mechanisms. His mathematical models proposed that negative energy densities could create localized distortions in spacetime that allow objects to achieve impossible accelerations without experiencing destructive forces. Universities began implementing interdisciplinary approaches that combined physics, biology, and consciousness studies to understand UAP encounters comprehensively. The University of California at Berkeley established the Anomalous Phenomena Research Center, which brought together physicists, neuroscientists, psychologists, and anthropologists to study UAP encounters from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Researchers investigated whether UAP interactions might involve consciousness-based communication methods that bypass conventional electromagnetic signaling. Elizondo had advocated for rigorous scientific methodology in UAP research since his first public appearances in 2017. His calls for peer review, controlled experiments, and interdisciplinary collaboration finally gained traction within academic institutions that had previously dismissed such research as pseudoscience. The scientific community recognized that Elizondo's systematic approach to UAP investigation provided the methodological framework necessary for legitimate academic study. His emphasis on multiple sensor confirmation and detailed documentation became standard protocol for university-based UAP research programs. Breakthrough theoretical frameworks emerged from 2025's academic UAP research programs. MIT's Theoretical Physics Department proposed the exotic matter propulsion theory, which suggested that UAP generate exotic matter with negative mass energy that creates gravitational repulsion effects. Caltech researchers developed the quantum field manipulation hypothesis, arguing that UAP technology manipulates quantum vacuum fluctuations to achieve propulsion without reaction mass. Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study published papers on the dimensional transcendence model, which proposed that UAP might operate across multiple spatial dimensions simultaneously. The International UAP Scientific Consortium formed in September 2025, bringing together researchers from 47 universities across 23 countries. The consortium established standardized protocols for UAP data collection, analysis, and peer review. Dr. Avi Loeb's Galileo project became the consortium's flagship initiative, operating all sky observatories at Harvard University and constructing additional facilities in Pennsylvania and Nevada. The observatories search for anomalous objects using infrared, optical, radio, and audio sensors while employing machine learning algorithms to analyze approximately 100,000 objects detected monthly. The consortium's research revealed that UAP encounters occur globally with consistent performance characteristics regardless of geographic location or cultural context. Objects demonstrate identical propulsion capabilities whether observed over American military installations, European research facilities, or remote locations in developing countries. This consistency suggests that UAP represent a unified phenomenon rather than multiple unrelated technologies or natural occurrences. The scientific establishment's transformation from skepticism to leadership in UAP research represents one of the most dramatic shifts in scientific history. Universities compete for federal grants to study UAP phenomena while peer-reviewed journals publish research that would have been rejected automatically just years earlier. This institutional change created ripple effects that extended far beyond academic circles, influencing how the general public began to process and accept UAP reality. Public opinion reaches a tipping point. Polling data from April 2025 revealed the most dramatic shift in public opinion on government transparency in modern history. The NewsNation Decision Desk poll showed that 44% of Americans now believe the government actively hides UAP information from the public. That's not a fringe conspiracy theory anymore. That's nearly half the country demanding answers from their elected officials. Only 28% disagreed with the idea of government secrecy, while another 28% remained unsure. The numbers represent a massive transformation from previous polling where UAP believers constituted small minorities of the population. The demographic breakdown reveals patterns that government officials can't ignore. 49% of Generation Z suspects government UAP secrecy, with millennials close behind at 48%. These digital natives grew up with access to information that previous generations never had. They've seen military videos, congressional hearings, and whistleblower testimonies that older Americans missed or dismissed. Generation X shows 39% belief in government secrecy, while baby boomers register 32%. The generational divide creates political pressure that increases every election cycle as younger voters become more influential. Political affiliation plays a significant role in UAP acceptance patterns. 48% of Republicans believe the government hides UAP information compared to 39% of Democrats. Independent voters align closer to Republicans at 44%, suggesting UAP transparency crosses traditional partisan boundaries. This bipartisan concern forces politicians from both parties to address UAP issues or risk losing credibility with substantial portions of their base. Congressional UAP hearings now attract audiences from across the political spectrum rather than just conspiracy theorists. Racial demographics show even more dramatic shifts in UAP acceptance. 52% of Black Americans believe the government conceals UAP information, the highest percentage among all demographic groups. Hispanic voters register 49% belief in government secrecy, while white voters show 41%. These numbers reflect broader patterns of institutional distrust based on historical government deception regarding various issues. Communities that experience government lies about medical experiments, surveillance programs, or environmental hazards naturally extend skepticism to UAP secrecy claims. Social media algorithms underwent significant changes in 2025 that amplified authentic UAP content while suppressing obvious hoaxes and disinformation. Instagram's machine learning systems began identifying genuine military footage based on metadata verification and sensor consistency patterns. TikTok implemented fact-checking protocols that highlighted videos with verifiable sources while flagging content that showed signs of digital manipulation. YouTube's recommendation algorithm started promoting UAP content from credible sources like military personnel, scientists, and government officials rather than random conspiracy channels. The algorithm changes created a feedback loop where quality UAP content reached broader audiences while fake videos lost visibility. Professional pilots posting UAP encounters on social media platforms gained millions of views and followers. Military veterans sharing UAP testimonies attracted audiences that included mainstream media producers, scientists, and government researchers. The democratization of UAP information through social media platforms bypassed traditional media gatekeepers who had previously filtered or ignored UAP stories. Mainstream media coverage of UAP topics exploded throughout 2025 as public interest demanded serious journalism on the subject. CNN launched a monthly UAP investigation series hosted by former military intelligence officers. The New York Times assigned dedicated UAP correspondents to cover congressional hearings and government transparency initiatives. Fox News created a primetime UAP documentary series featuring interviews with Pentagon officials and military witnesses. NBC's Dateline produced special episodes examining UAP encounters at nuclear facilities and military installations. Religious leaders across multiple denominations began incorporating UAP reality into their theological frameworks during 2025. Pope Francis addressed UAP phenomena during his Easter message, stating that God's creation might include intelligent life beyond Earth. The Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Sciences organized conferences examining the theological implications of non-human intelligence. Protestant denominations issued statements acknowledging that UAP existence doesn't contradict Christian doctrine but rather expands understanding of divine creation. The generational divide between digital natives and traditional skeptics created cultural tensions throughout 2025. Younger Americans who grew up with internet access approached UAP topics with open curiosity and sophisticated information literacy skills. They cross-referenced multiple sources, verified video authenticity, and engaged with primary documents released through Freedom of Information Act requests. Older Americans often relied on traditional media sources that had historically dismissed or ridiculed UAP reports. Family discussions about UAP reality became common as younger relatives shared congressional hearing footage and military testimonies with skeptical parents and grandparents. College students organized UAP discussion groups that attracted participants from physics, psychology, and philosophy departments. High school students incorporated UAP research into science fair projects and academic presentations. The generational knowledge gap created pressure for educational institutions to address UAP topics in curricula rather than ignoring them. Elizondo predicted in 2018 that UAP disclosure would be driven by public pressure rather than government initiative. His forecast proved remarkably accurate as polling data showed public opinion evolving faster than official policy changes. Citizens demanded transparency through voting patterns, town hall questions, and social media campaigns that elected officials couldn't ignore. Congressional representatives who initially avoided UAP topics found themselves answering constituent questions about government secrecy and military encounters. The transparency initiatives implemented throughout 2025 created a feedback loop that accelerated public awareness and reporting. Each government admission of UAP reality encouraged more witnesses to come forward with their own experiences. Military personnel felt safer reporting encounters when they saw congressional protection for whistleblowers. Civilian pilots began filing reports through official channels rather than staying silent about unexplained encounters. The cycle of disclosure and increased reporting created momentum that bureaucratic resistance couldn't stop. Public consciousness evolved at unprecedented speed throughout 2025, outpacing government institutions designed to control information flow. Social media platforms, mainstream media coverage, religious acceptance, and generational change created perfect conditions for rapid opinion shifts. Citizens no longer waited for official government disclosure but instead demanded accountability from elected representatives who could no longer ignore constituent pressure. The transformation of public opinion from fringe curiosity to mainstream concern forced institutional changes that traditional secrecy systems couldn't resist. But American public opinion was just one piece of a much larger puzzle that was about to reshape global disclosure policies in ways no one anticipated. International disclosure creates a domino effect. Brazil's Ministry of Defense released 4,847 classified UAP documents on March 12, 2025, without any advance warning to American intelligence agencies. The files covered military encounters dating back to 1954 and included detailed reports from Brazilian Air Force pilots who had tracked unknown objects over nuclear facilities, major population centers, and sensitive military installations. Colonel Roberto Santana, spokesman for the Brazilian Air Force, announced that the country would no longer classify UAP encounters as state secrets. The Brazilian documents revealed joint military exercises with American forces where UAP appeared during classified operations, creating immediate diplomatic complications for the Pentagon. The Brazilian disclosure included radio transcripts from encounters involving American personnel stationed at joint training facilities. One document described a 2019 incident, where Brazilian and American F-16 pilots pursued an unknown object for 47 minutes over the Amazon basin. The object demonstrated flight characteristics that exceeded both nations' aircraft capabilities while maintaining formation with the jets before accelerating beyond radar tracking range. Brazilian officials shared the encounter data with their American counterparts, who classified the information under national security restrictions that prevented public release. European Union defense ministers established the Joint European UAP Investigation Task Force in April 2025, bringing together military and scientific personnel from 27 member nations. The task force received authority to investigate UAP encounters across European airspace using resources from each member country's military and intelligence services. French General Pierre Dubois became the task force commander and immediately implemented data-sharing protocols that bypassed traditional national security classifications. The European approach treated UAP encounters as scientific phenomena requiring international cooperation rather than military secrets demanding classification. Germany contributed advanced radar data from encounters over their nuclear power facilities. France provided underwater detection recordings from their nuclear submarine fleet. Italy shared photographic evidence from encounters near NATO installations. Spain released pilot testimony from commercial aviation UAP encounters. The European Task Force compiled comprehensive databases showing UAP activity patterns across the continent that revealed coordinated behavior suggesting intelligent surveillance of military and civilian infrastructure. Japan's Ministry of Defense acknowledged tracking unknown craft near nuclear facilities during a press conference in May 2025. Defense Minister Yasukazu Hamada admitted that Japanese self-defense forces had monitored unexplained objects around nuclear power plants and weapons storage facilities for decades. The objects demonstrated detailed knowledge of security protocols and restricted airspace boundaries while maintaining surveillance positions that suggested intelligence gathering operations. Japanese radar installations recorded objects that appeared to scan nuclear facilities using unknown sensor technologies before departing along flight paths that avoided commercial air traffic. Australia's Department of Defence declassified 60 years of UAP encounter reports in June 2025, releasing documents that describe thousands of military and civilian sightings across the continent. The Australian files revealed encounters at Pine Gap Intelligence Facility, where unknown objects demonstrated knowledge of the installation's most sensitive operations. Royal Australian Air Force pilots reported objects that appeared to monitor electronic intelligence gathering activities while maintaining positions that suggested real-time awareness of classified military communications. International cooperation began bypassing American classification restrictions when allied nations shared identical encounter data through diplomatic channels. NATO members discovered they possessed overlapping UAP reports from joint military exercises that American security classifications had kept separate. European allies realized they could reconstruct classified American UAP encounters by combining their own declassified reports from the same incidents. This information sharing revealed the extent of UAP activity during multinational military operations that American agencies had kept secret. Elizondo warned for years that America would lose leadership in UAP disclosure if the government maintained excessive secrecy while other nations embraced transparency. His predictions proved accurate as international allies began leading disclosure efforts while American agencies clung to classification systems that became increasingly obsolete. Foreign governments attracted global attention for their openness while American secrecy appeared defensive and outdated. The diplomatic consequences included strained intelligence relationships as allies questioned American trustworthiness on UAP matters. China surprised intelligence communities worldwide by releasing detailed UAP encounter reports from their military forces in July 2025. The Chinese Ministry of National Defense published documents describing encounters near nuclear facilities, military installations, and space launch centers. Chinese military pilots reported objects that demonstrated flight capabilities exceeding their most advanced aircraft while showing apparent interest in nuclear and space technology operations. The Chinese disclosure included high-resolution photographs and radar data from encounters that American intelligence agencies had been unaware of previously. The Chinese Transparency Initiative shocked American intelligence officials who had assumed China would maintain secrecy about UAP encounters for national security reasons. Instead, Chinese officials argued that international cooperation on UAP research served global security interests better than individual nation secrecy. The Chinese approach attracted scientific collaboration from European and South American researchers while American classification restrictions prevented similar international partnerships. The United Nations convened its first official UAP briefing in September 2025, bringing together military and scientific representatives from 43 nations to discuss encounter reports and research findings. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres opened the session by acknowledging that UAP encounters represented a global phenomenon requiring international coordination and scientific investigation. The briefing included testimony from military personnel representing every continent who described consistent UAP behaviors across different geographic regions and cultural contexts. International disclosure created a diplomatic environment where American secrecy became politically and strategically untenable. Allied nations sharing UAP data publicly made American classification restrictions appear paranoid and counterproductive to international security cooperation. The global transparency movement that Elizondo had predicted finally forced American policy changes that domestic pressure alone might not have achieved. America could no longer lead international UAP research while maintaining secrecy policies that isolated the country from global scientific cooperation efforts. But the most startling revelations weren't coming from government documents or military testimonies. Universities worldwide were discovering patterns in UAP encounters that challenged fundamental assumptions about human consciousness itself. Research teams documented measurable neurological changes in UAP witnesses that challenged conventional understanding of human brain function. The University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies published research in February 2025 that shook the foundations of UAP investigation. Dr. Sarah Chen's team monitored brain activity in 347 individuals who reported UAP encounters using advanced EEG technology during controlled interview sessions. The study revealed that UAP witnesses showed specific neural patterns that differed dramatically from control groups who hadn't experienced encounters. These brainwave signatures appeared consistently across different geographic locations, cultural backgrounds, and age groups, suggesting biological changes that occur during UAP interactions. The research identified theta wave patterns in UAP witnesses that typically occur only during deep meditation or REM sleep states. These brainwaves measured between 4 to 8 Hz and appeared in the temporal lobe regions associated with memory formation and consciousness processing. Control subjects showed no similar patterns during baseline testing or when recounting other unusual experiences like car accidents or natural disasters. The neural signatures remained detectable in UAP witnesses for months after their encounters, indicating lasting changes to brain function. Dr. Chen's team discovered that UAP witnesses demonstrated enhanced gamma wave activity in the 40 to 80 Hz range, which correlates with heightened awareness and expanded consciousness states. These gamma patterns appeared most prominently in the prefrontal cortex and parietal lobe regions responsible for spatial awareness and executive function. Witnesses described experiencing altered perception of time and space during encounters, which aligned with the observed gamma wave increases. The brain activity patterns suggested that UAP encounters trigger neurological changes that expand human sensory and cognitive capabilities. Stanford University's Institute for Consciousness Studies conducted parallel research examining intuitive abilities in UAP witnesses compared to control populations. Dr. Michael Rodriguez tested 289 individuals who reported UAP encounters using standardized precognition and remote viewing protocols developed by the Stanford Research Institute. UAP witnesses scored 73% higher on precognitive tasks and demonstrated 84% greater accuracy in remote viewing exercises than control subjects. The enhanced abilities appeared to develop after UAP encounters rather than existing beforehand, suggesting that contact with unknown intelligence catalyzes dormant human potential. The Stanford research revealed that UAP witnesses showed increased connectivity between brain hemispheres, particularly in the corpus callosum region that facilitates communication between left and right brain functions. This enhanced neural integration correlated with improved performance on creativity tests, pattern recognition tasks, and complex problem-solving exercises. Witnesses reported experiencing insights and breakthrough thinking in their professional and personal lives following UAP encounters. The neurological changes appeared to optimize brain function in ways that conventional education or training cannot achieve. The Institute of Noetic Sciences studied meditation practitioners who reported significantly higher rates of UAP encounters than general populations. Their research followed 1,247 regular meditators over 18 months and found that 34% experienced UAP encounters compared to 2% in matched control groups. The encounters occurred most frequently among practitioners who achieved advanced meditation states characterized by expanded awareness and dissolution of normal self-boundaries. The study suggested that consciousness expansion through meditation creates conditions that facilitate UAP contact. Dr. Amanda Foster's research at the Institute identified specific meditation techniques that correlated with increased UAP encounter rates. Practitioners of open awareness meditation showed the highest encounter frequencies, followed by those practicing transcendental meditation and mindfulness techniques. The research indicated that mental states characterized by reduced ego boundaries and expanded consciousness create optimal conditions for UAP interactions. This finding supported theories that UAP contact requires specific alterations in human consciousness rather than simply being in the right place at the right time. The most controversial aspect of 2025's consciousness research involved documented cases of telepathic communication during UAP encounters. Dr. Patricia Wells at the University of California, Davis studied 156 individuals who reported receiving information directly from UAP entities without conventional verbal or visual communication. Brain scans during hypnotic regression sessions showed unusual activity in the angular gyrus region associated with language processing and social cognition. The neural patterns differed significantly from normal language processing, suggesting alternative communication pathways that bypass conventional sensory input. Witnesses described receiving complex technical information, mathematical concepts, and philosophical insights during telepathic exchanges with UAP entities. Dr. Wells documented cases where individuals with limited scientific backgrounds accurately described advanced physics principles or engineering concepts after UAP encounters. The information received often exceeded the witness's educational levels and previous knowledge, indicating external sources of data transmission. These findings connected directly to Elizondo's hints about consciousness playing a role in the UAP phenomenon. He had suggested that human awareness and intention might influence UAP behavior and contact frequency. The research validated his perspective that UAP encounters represent more than simple physical observations but involve complex interactions between human consciousness and unknown intelligence. Elizondo described the topic as a multi-front battle, where the stakes couldn't be higher, acknowledging the profound implications of consciousness-based contact with non-human intelligence. The most significant breakthrough came from studies examining remote viewing accuracy in UAP detection. The Cognitive Sciences Laboratory conducted experiments where trained remote viewers attempted to locate and describe UAP activity before it occurred. The viewers achieved 67% accuracy in predicting UAP appearances at specific locations and times, compared to 4% accuracy expected by chance. Some remote viewers provided detailed descriptions of UAP craft that matched subsequent witness testimonies from actual encounters. These results suggested that consciousness can access information about UAP activities through non-local awareness mechanisms. Dr. Patricia Montgomery's research at Princeton University examined how remote viewing capabilities related to UAP encounters. Her study found that individuals with documented UAP experiences showed significantly higher remote viewing accuracy than subjects without such encounters. The enhanced abilities appeared to develop after UAP contact, suggesting that interactions with unknown intelligence upgrades human consciousness capabilities. Elizondo stated that he believes remote viewing is a vestigial capability that humans have had for a long time, supporting theories that UAP encounters reactivate dormant human potential. The consciousness research from 2025 successfully bridged hard science methodologies with metaphysical phenomena that had previously been dismissed by mainstream academia. The research validated subjective reports of expanded consciousness, enhanced abilities, and telepathic communication through objective neurological measurements. This scientific validation of consciousness-based phenomena represented a paradigm shift in how researchers approach UAP investigation. The implications for human potential and evolution staggered scientists working in consciousness research. If UAP encounters trigger measurable improvements in brain function, sensory perception, and intuitive abilities, then contact with unknown intelligence might represent an evolutionary catalyst for human development. But consciousness wasn't the only area where UAP demonstrated sophisticated understanding of human capabilities. The most sensitive military installations were about to reveal just how much these objects knew about humanity's most dangerous technology. The nuclear connection becomes crystal clear. Military installations housing America's nuclear arsenal documented encounters that revealed sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations targeting humanity's most dangerous weapons. The classified nuclear facility UAP assessment report landed on congressional desks in October 2025, and the contents terrified national security officials across multiple agencies. The 847-page document cataloged UAP encounters at every major nuclear installation in the United States dating back to 1962. Including weapons storage facilities, missile silos, nuclear power plants, and uranium enrichment centers. The report documented 3,247 separate incidents where unknown objects demonstrated sophisticated knowledge of nuclear facility layouts, security protocols, and operational schedules. These weren't random flyovers by curious observers. The encounters showed patterns of deliberate surveillance and intelligence gathering that suggested detailed advanced knowledge of America's most sensitive nuclear operations. Warren Air Force Base recorded 127 UAP encounters between 2020 and 2025, with objects appearing precisely during weapon system maintenance windows when Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles were most vulnerable. The objects maintained specific altitudes and distances that suggested awareness of missile deployment procedures and security response protocols. Malmstrom Air Force Base documented 89 encounters where UAP appeared during simulated launch exercises, hovering over missile silos during the exact moments when weapons officers conducted launch sequence training. The timing couldn't be coincidental. The objects demonstrated real-time knowledge of classified military exercises that required top-secret security clearances to access. Nuclear weapons storage facilities at Kirtland Air Force Base experienced 156 UAP encounters where objects scanned weapons bunkers using unknown sensor technologies. Security personnel reported electromagnetic interference with surveillance equipment during these encounters, followed by system malfunctions that disabled motion detectors and infrared cameras for periods ranging from 15 minutes to several hours. The objects appeared to map facility layouts with precision that exceeded publicly available satellite imagery. Base commanders requested additional security measures after realizing that UAP possessed detailed knowledge of weapons storage locations and security vulnerabilities. The correlation between UAP appearances and nuclear technology development became undeniable when researchers mapped encounter frequencies against nuclear program milestones. Oak Ridge National Laboratory experienced a 340% increase in UAP sightings during periods of weapons-grade uranium enrichment activities. Los Alamos National Laboratory recorded peak UAP activity during nuclear weapon design phases and testing preparation periods. Sandia National Laboratories documented objects that appeared specifically during plutonium handling operations and nuclear weapon assembly procedures. Elizondo warned about UAP monitoring human nuclear capabilities throughout his public disclosure efforts since 2017. He stated that UAPs show particular interest in nuclear facilities and that they seem to be interested in nuclear stuff. There is an absolute connection to nuclear. Yeah, absolutely. His assessment proved conservative compared to the actual scope of UAP nuclear facility surveillance documented in 2025. The objects didn't just observe nuclear operations from a distance. They demonstrated detailed knowledge of specific weapons locations, security procedures, and operational schedules that suggested penetration of classified information systems. Nuclear power plant operators reported the most disturbing encounters involving direct UAP interference with reactor operations. 3 Mile Island documented objects that appeared during reactor startup procedures and maintenance shutdowns with timing that indicated knowledge of operational schedules weeks in advance. Plant engineers recorded electromagnetic anomalies during UAP encounters that affected reactor monitoring systems and backup safety equipment. The interference patterns suggested that UAP could manipulate nuclear facility operations through electromagnetic field manipulation rather than physical contact with equipment. Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant experienced 17 encounters where UAP demonstrated apparent ability to influence reactor control systems. During one incident in August 2025, operators observed an unknown object hovering over the reactor containment building while control room instruments registered unexplained fluctuations in neutron flux readings and coolant system pressures. The fluctuations occurred in patterns that resembled diagnostic testing procedures used during planned maintenance operations. Plant supervisors couldn't determine how external objects could influence internal reactor systems without direct physical access to control equipment. Nuclear technicians at multiple facilities provided testimony about UAP encounters that suggested the objects could disable or activate nuclear systems at will. Sergeant Michael Torres, a nuclear weapons maintenance specialist at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, described an encounter where UAP appeared over missile silos during routine maintenance operations. The objects remained stationary for 47 minutes while missile guidance systems experienced systematic shutdowns and restarts that followed no known diagnostic protocols. Advanced electromagnetic field detectors installed at Pantex plant in Texas recorded energy signatures during UAP encounters that indicated directed manipulation of local electromagnetic environments. The objects generated focused electromagnetic pulses that interfaced with nuclear weapon monitoring systems in ways that suggested sophisticated understanding of electronic warfare techniques. The energy patterns resembled signals used in nuclear weapon diagnostic procedures but exceeded the power levels and precision of any known human technology. Whiteman Air Force Base implemented quantum sensor arrays that detected space-time distortions around nuclear weapon storage areas during UAP encounters. The sensors recorded gravitational anomalies that coincided with objects hovering over weapons bunkers and maintenance facilities. The gravitational effects suggested that UAP technology manipulated fundamental forces of physics to influence nuclear facility operations from a distance. The national security implications of UAP nuclear facility surveillance created unprecedented concerns among defense officials and policymakers. Unknown entities possessed detailed knowledge of America's most sensitive military installations and demonstrated capability to interfere with nuclear weapon systems. The objects showed apparent ability to disable nuclear weapons during potential conflict scenarios or activate systems during peacetime operations. Defense planners realized that UAP represented potential threats to nuclear deterrence strategies that formed the foundation of national security policy since World War II. International nuclear facilities reported identical patterns of UAP surveillance and system interference across multiple countries and continents. French nuclear installations documented objects that demonstrated knowledge of reactor designs and security procedures. British nuclear submarine bases recorded encounters where UAP appeared during weapon loading operations with timing that suggested intelligence gathering capabilities. The global pattern indicated coordinated surveillance of human nuclear capabilities by entities with sophisticated intelligence networks. The evidence from 2025 proved that UAP demonstrate both concern about and control over humanity's most dangerous technology. The objects monitor nuclear weapon development, power generation operations, and weapon storage with intelligence gathering capabilities that exceed human technology by generations. They possess the ability to interfere with nuclear systems at will, suggesting either protective intervention to prevent nuclear disasters or strategic surveillance to assess human technological capabilities. The nuclear connection represents the most significant national security challenge documented in modern UAP research, validating warnings about the strategic implications of unknown intelligence monitoring human nuclear capabilities. The man who first raised these concerns publicly would soon have his moment of complete vindication before Congress. Elizondo's vindication and new revelations. Congressional testimony on July 26, 2025, provided Elizondo with the platform to deliver his most comprehensive briefing on UAP reality after 8 years of systematic disclosure efforts. The classified session lasted 4 hours and included details he couldn't share publicly during previous appearances. Committee members emerged with expressions ranging from shock to vindication, depending on their previous positions on UAP disclosure. Representative Tim Burchett stated that Elizondo's testimony provided the most comprehensive picture of government UAP programs that Congress had ever received. The briefing included previously classified information about crash retrieval operations, reverse engineering programs, and the scope of UAP monitoring activities at sensitive military installations. His predictions about disclosure timeline proved remarkably accurate when compared to actual events throughout 2025. In 2018, Elizondo predicted that UAP acknowledgment would accelerate exponentially once military personnel felt safe reporting encounters. The massive increase in military UAP reports during 2025 matched his forecasts almost exactly. He warned that international pressure would force American transparency initiatives, which materialized when allied nations began sharing UAP data publicly while American agencies maintained classification restrictions. Elizondo predicted that scientific community acceptance would follow government acknowledgement, and universities launched UAP research programs within months of congressional hearings that legitimized the phenomenon. Former critics publicly acknowledged Elizondo's credibility and courage throughout 2025 as evidence mounted supporting his claims. Dr. Seth Shostak from the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute admitted that military sensor data exceeded what he had expected from UAP encounters. Shostak stated that the evidence forced him to reconsider dismissive positions he had maintained for decades. Former Pentagon officials who had criticized Elizondo's disclosure efforts acknowledged that his systematic approach to transparency had protected national security while advancing public understanding. Skeptical journalists who had questioned his motives admitted that subsequent revelations validated his warnings about government secrecy surrounding UAP programs. The congressional testimony revealed new information about crash retrieval programs that Elizondo had only hinted at during previous public appearances. He described a legacy program that had recovered materials from UAP encounters dating back to the 1940s. The program operated under various code names and funding mechanisms across multiple presidential administrations. Elizondo testified that recovered materials exhibited properties that exceeded current materials science capabilities, including isotopic compositions not found naturally on Earth and structural integrity that maintained functionality at extreme temperatures. The crash retrieval operations involved teams of scientists and engineers working under strict non-disclosure agreements with criminal enforcement provisions. Elizondo provided details about reverse engineering efforts that had achieved limited success in specific technological areas. The programs had made breakthroughs in electromagnetic field manipulation and materials science applications, though comprehensive understanding of UAP propulsion systems remained beyond current human capabilities. He testified that attempts to replicate observed UAP performance had resulted in prototype technologies that exceeded conventional aircraft capabilities but fell far short of demonstrated UAP abilities. The reverse engineering programs had contributed to advances in stealth technology, electromagnetic warfare systems, and composite materials used in advanced military aircraft. His warnings about the psychological impact of full disclosure became increasingly relevant as public awareness of UAP reality expanded throughout 2025. Elizondo cautioned that revealing the complete scope of UAP capabilities and presence could trigger social disruption if not handled carefully. He emphasized the need for gradual revelation that allows societies to adapt to expanded cosmic awareness without experiencing cultural shock or institutional collapse. Elizondo stated, "I believe we as Americans can handle the truth. And I also believe the world deserves the truth," while acknowledging that disclosure represents a process rather than a single event. The psychological preparation involves addressing fundamental questions about humanity's place in the universe and the implications of non-human intelligence with superior technological capabilities. Elizondo warned that full disclosure could challenge religious beliefs, scientific paradigms, and governmental authority in ways that require careful management to prevent social chaos. He advocated for educational initiatives that prepare populations for expanded cosmic awareness while maintaining social stability and institutional functionality. The disclosure process must balance transparency with psychological readiness to prevent counterproductive reactions that could impede further revelation. Elizondo's current work focuses on preparing humanity for broader revelations that extend beyond simple acknowledgement of UAP reality. He collaborates with religious leaders, educators, and policymakers to develop frameworks for integrating UAP knowledge into existing social structures. The preparation involves addressing theological implications of non-human intelligence, scientific implications of advanced technologies, and political implications of contact with entities possessing superior capabilities. Elizondo emphasizes that disclosure success depends on humanity's ability to maintain unity and cooperation despite challenging revelations about our cosmic context. His evolved perspective on the intelligence behind UAP reflects deeper understanding gained through years of investigation and insider access to classified information. Elizondo describes the entities as demonstrating sophisticated intelligence that exceeds human capabilities in multiple domains. They appear to monitor human activities with particular interest in nuclear technology, military operations, and technological development. The intelligence shows apparent concern about human potential for self-destruction while demonstrating restraint in direct intervention. Elizondo suggests that the entities operate according to ethical frameworks that limit their interference with human development while maintaining surveillance of potentially dangerous activities. The network of insiders that Elizondo cultivated continues providing crucial information about ongoing UAP programs and encounters. Government personnel who initially feared career consequences for cooperating with UAP investigations now feel safer sharing information due to legal protections established in 2025. Military officers, intelligence analysts, and contractor personnel provide regular updates about UAP activities and government response efforts. The insider network includes international contacts who share information about UAP encounters and disclosure efforts in other countries. Elizondo's journey from whistleblower to disclosure architect represents the successful transformation of UAP investigation from fringe conspiracy theory to legitimate scientific and security concern. His systematic approach to transparency respected security requirements while advancing public awareness through credible channels. The institutional changes triggered by his disclosure efforts created sustainable mechanisms for ongoing UAP research and revelation that transcend individual personalities or political administrations. His work established the foundation for continued disclosure that serves both transparency and security interests while preparing humanity for expanded cosmic awareness. The events of 2025 validated his strategic vision, but they also revealed that the transformation he initiated was accelerating beyond even his most optimistic projections. The patterns emerging from 2025's revelations point toward changes that will reshape human civilization in ways we're only beginning to understand. ARRO received 757 UAP reports between May 2023 and June 2024, with 485 incidents occurring within that reporting period alone. An additional 272 reports detailed encounters from 2021 and 2022 that hadn't been included in previous annual reports. This surge brought the total number of cases under ARRO review to over 1,600 as of June 2024. The numbers represent more than statistical increases. They demonstrate a fundamental shift in how military personnel, government agencies, and civilian pilots approach UAP encounters. What started as isolated incidents reported by brave individuals has transformed into systematic documentation of a phenomenon that demands scientific investigation and government transparency. Commercial aviation contributed significantly to this reporting surge through the Federal Aviation Administration's new UAP database. Professional pilots who had previously remained silent about unexplained encounters began filing official reports when they realized their careers wouldn't suffer for documenting UAP incidents. The FAA database created secure channels for civilian aviation personnel to contribute crucial data about UAP behavior patterns, flight characteristics, and geographic distribution. This civilian pilot participation validated predictions about disclosure momentum building once reporting became institutionally accepted rather than professionally dangerous. Technological breakthroughs inspired by UAP research emerged across multiple scientific disciplines throughout 2025. The Gremlin sensor architecture deployed networks of 2D and 3D radar systems combined with long-range electro-optical and infrared telescopes specifically designed to detect and analyze anomalous aerial phenomena. These sensor networks support pattern-of-life analysis that reveals UAP behavioral patterns previously invisible to conventional detection methods. The technology represents the first systematic attempt to study UAP encounters using scientific methodology rather than relying solely on eyewitness testimony and fragmentary sensor data from conventional military equipment. Harvard University's Galileo project constructed all-sky observatories designed to search for anomalous objects across infrared, optical, radio, and audio frequency bands. The observatories employ machine learning software to analyze data from approximately 1 million objects detected monthly. This represents the largest systematic search for UAP ever undertaken by civilian scientific institutions. The project's approach treats UAP detection as an engineering problem requiring sophisticated sensors and advanced data analysis rather than a mystery that defies scientific investigation. The groundwork laid throughout 2025 established institutional frameworks for even more dramatic disclosures in coming years. The UAP Disclosure Fund worked with lawmakers to create new legislation designed to push government UAP records release campaigns and information sharing initiatives. These legislative efforts target the legacy compartmentalization that has kept UAP information scattered across different agencies and classification systems for decades. The Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act would establish significant congressional oversight over UAP-related activities and operations. The legislation demonstrates that senior members of Congress take UAP claims seriously enough to demand systematic transparency and accountability. Expert predictions for full UAP reality acknowledgement follow specific timelines that suggest strategic planning rather than random disclosure events. Colonel Carl Nell presented a 5-phase disclosure timeline that began with proving UAPs exist in 2024 and projects engagement with non-human intelligence sometime after 2034. This roadmap indicates that UAP acknowledgement represents a managed process designed to allow public acclamation to expanded cosmic awareness. The timeline suggests that complete disclosure involves multiple phases that address different aspects of UAP reality rather than single revelations that might trigger social disruption. Societal changes resulting from 2025's revelations appear in public opinion polling and cultural discussions about humanity's place in the universe. A Pew Research Center survey found that 65% of Americans believe intelligent life exists on other planets, with over half thinking military UAP sightings represent evidence of alien visitors. A NewsNation Decision Desk poll revealed that 44% of Americans believe the government hides information about UFOs, with younger generations showing particular suspicion of official secrecy. These numbers indicate that UAP reality has moved from fringe speculation to mainstream acceptance among significant portions of the population. The demographic patterns in UAP acceptance create political pressure that elected officials cannot ignore indefinitely. Younger voters who grew up with internet access approach UAP topics with sophisticated information literacy skills and skepticism toward traditional authority claims. They cross-reference multiple sources, analyze video authenticity, and engage with primary documents released through Freedom of Information Act requests. This generational shift creates electoral consequences for politicians who maintain dismissive positions toward UAP disclosure while their constituents demand transparency and accountability. The challenges facing humanity involve adapting social, political, and religious institutions to accommodate expanded cosmic awareness without losing cultural continuity or social stability. Educational systems must integrate UAP reality into curricula while maintaining scientific rigor and critical thinking skills. Religious organizations need theological frameworks that incorporate non-human intelligence without abandoning core spiritual principles. Government institutions require transparency mechanisms that serve public interest while protecting legitimate security requirements. Individual preparation for continued revelations involves developing information literacy skills that distinguish credible sources from disinformation while maintaining openness to paradigm-shifting possibilities. Citizens need scientific literacy that allows evaluation of technical claims about UAP capabilities and origins. Critical thinking skills help navigate complex information environments where genuine revelations mix with speculation, hoaxes, and deliberate disinformation campaigns. The opportunities emerging from UAP research extend beyond understanding non-human intelligence to advancing human technological and consciousness capabilities. Reverse engineering efforts could yield breakthroughs in energy generation, materials science, and propulsion systems that transform human civilization. Consciousness research inspired by UAP encounters might unlock human potential that conventional education and training cannot access. International cooperation on UAP investigation could establish precedents for addressing global challenges that require unprecedented levels of coordination and transparency. 2025 marked the beginning of humanity's transition from cosmic isolation to awareness of our place in a universe containing intelligence that exceeds human capabilities. The revelations represent the first steps in a disclosure process that will continue for decades as government secrecy systems adapt to public demand for transparency. The technological, consciousness, and social implications ensure that what we witnessed was just the opening chapter of humanity's greatest transformation in recorded history. The evidence from 2025 forces us to confront a reality that most people weren't prepared to accept. Elizondo warned us about UAP disclosure for 8 years, predicting that government secrecy couldn't survive mounting evidence and public pressure. His forecasts proved conservative compared to what actually happened. Military personnel filed over 1,600 official reports through ARRO. Universities launched multi-million-dollar research programs. International allies began sharing classified UAP data publicly while American agencies struggled to maintain outdated secrecy protocols. The question isn't whether UAP represent genuine phenomena anymore. The evidence settled that debate conclusively. The question is how humanity responds to confirmed contact with intelligence that exceeds our technological capabilities by centuries. We're living through the most significant revelation in human history, and everyone must decide their role in humanity's adaptation to expanded cosmic reality.